Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. It's a new week. It is Monday. We're starting a new theme, and this week's theme is unique vocals, which I think is going to be a pretty interesting week. We're going to be looking at bands whose vocalist is easily stood out among the peers. If you hear this song, well, specifically if you hear this vocalist, you know exactly who they are. That's what we're going to be looking at this week. We're going to start off this theme with some Mastodon. Crack the Skye is the song we're going to be looking at. Let's dig into this. Very cool start. Ooh, bringing in some groove with those bass kicks. Yeah, I like those two guitar lines right there. They're both doing the same thing, which is eighth notes, but they're doing very different movements. I like how the voice fits very cleanly inside the guitar sound. It almost feels like they're blending together. That harsh vocal is very interesting. It has a lot of forward movement. It's like it pierces right through everything. And it is such stark contrast to this wide reverbish clean that he does. Yeah, nice little tom run there into the keychain, or the chord change. Those are digitized vocals in the left, weren't they? Yeah. No, some really nice stuff going on in the cymbals. And there's like these little eighth note runs in the cymbals that are going right up against some of these eighth note runs in the bass kick, and it's creating this sort of like back and forth call and response of little tiny embellishments. Now this is interesting. The song has been fairly cohesive up to here, and I feel like the solo right there was just a little disjointed. It felt rhythmically off with the rest of the bands. Yeah, that bass coming through real clean here with those eighth note, just root notes. Something was real interesting rhythmically about that section. I'm not sure what it was. What specific aspect of it felt odd, but yeah, there's something strange going on there. All right. So yeah, some really cool stuff going on. So here's something interesting is that I didn't really notice too much of a song structure. They really stuck with a specific vibe, a specific atmosphere, similar guitar tones, and just kind of ran this entire song with a lot of these very similar sonic identities to the song. There wasn't really any wild tempo changes or atmospheric changes. The volume level is pretty consistent throughout. It was pretty much a song that just kind of hits a level and sticks within it for an extended period of time. And, it works. I think it does. It creates sort of this element of being trapped in this sound. There really isn't much of a change to it. There are some subtle changes. We do have the guitar solo section. I would say there is like a verse chorus thing idea that I see completely split by, well, most audibly split by the vocal technique, whether it's the harsh or the clean. There are some minor things going on in the guitars, like the verse riff is different than the chorus riff, and it's different than the bridge riff. But for the most part, the overarching ideas of theme and atmosphere and emotion, volume, most of the dynamic elements are consistent through the entire song. So it really relies on the music itself to provide these distinctions throughout the song so that it doesn't feel like they're just playing the same thing over and over. Now, speaking about some of those differentiations, some of the riffs and vocal ideas, I want to touch on this guy's vocals real quick. Not because it's Unique Vocals Week, but because I do think that they're doing something interesting despite working within what these two styles typically do. Now, first, I want to look at his harshest because I think that was the first thing we heard. And what stood out to me is that it's narrow and cuts, which is sort of the opposite of actually both of these kind of work in the opposite. So usually when we have somebody who jumps between a harsh vocal and a clean vocal, the cleans are going to be a little bit more narrow, I would say, especially a lot of singers. I say probably popular in metalcore, probably some radio rock too. It's a lot of pushing to the front. You get a more narrow, brighter sound than really building a lot of the character from the throat. And so you get sort of a more narrow clean and a wider, more powerful harsh. And I feel like this is the opposite. We have a clean that's just super wide, lots of reverb put on it. He is, I would say, placing the sound a little bit further back. It kind of gets this wider tone to it, and it's a little darker, more warmer, I think is the sound I want, rather than something a little bit more forward placed, which is going to get a brighter sound. He gets a lot of width out of that, some roundness from placing it further back as well. And like I said, then there's also some reverb stuff put on top of that, and it just creates this booming, wide, clean vocal. Now, to offset that a little bit, I think is the reason why they do this. It's placed further down in the mix. It kind of sits in the same area as the guitars, and I even mentioned that part of the effects that they've put on it kind of allows it to meld into the guitar in some sections, and it kind of blends into the song, which again is kind of the opposite. Usually your clean vocals are going to soar above your band, and when we hear harsh vocals, those are the ones that get pushed into the band in stuff like post metal, where I've been told that a lot of people see the vocals as another rhythmic element to the music rather than a melody line that sits above what the music's doing. This is sort of the opposite, where the cleans are pushed into the band, and they're given the width and power. Whereas the harshes, see, at least to me, they're very cutting. They're very narrow. They have this the compression on it to give it the crackle, the harshness to it, but it's razor honed. It's not a big, wide, strengthy element. Usually people well, at least in my experience with harsh vocals, they shift to the harshes to add aggression or width or power to a section, and this seems to undercut that. It doesn't have that width or power, but it gains cutting power. It gets through the band, and it makes it easier to hear. There also seems to be a little bit of pitch to it that isn't the typical overtones of adding compression, of putting, amplifying fry. It seems to be almost that he is singing a note and just adding a ton of compression on top of it. That's what it sounds like to me. Again, I make all of these observations not being a vocal coach. Vocals are not typically what I listen for, or it's not typically what I'm trained in, what I've been educated on. But these are some things I've picked up over the years, and kind of have educated myself on. So if I'm wrong on any of this, let me know. But it's a very interesting inverse of role, I would say. That it works though too. I really like these harshes. I like them more than the cleans, which is very strange for me. But like I said, the roles they play and how they're created are seems to be the inverse of the norm, and I really enjoy that. I like how the guitars are utilized. As usual, not as usual, but very common. They're panned. We have two guitars. They're both panned to one ear, and right off the start, we heard them both going in on an eighth note run, just constant eighth notes. But they were doing totally different things. The left side was doing rises and falls across the chord, and the right one was just kind of doing its own thing. I didn't really sense any pattern to it. And sometimes they were creating very nice dyads, and other times it felt like they were just doing their own thing, just completely divorced from each other, not really uh, amplifying each other in any way, but not detracting either, just kind of creating this chaotic sound, but not in a sense that the song sounded chaotic. It just had this noise surrounding it. And I thought that was very well done. You can see this idea throughout a lot of the song, where the two guitars are doing their own things and occasionally come together to create interesting or note relationships and textures, but it doesn't seem to be the focus of having this dual melody idea. It seems to just counterpoint, just having two ideas present. Um, and I think that's really interesting. Like I said, it's counterpoint without any purpose. It's counterpoint for counterpoint's sake. There's two melodies because they have two guitars, rather than trying to create interesting connections between two melodic lines. And I think it's an interesting way to go about it, but it works. Like I said, it creates a certain level of chaos without allowing the song to sound like a dissonant mess, without introducing a cacophony. So, yeah, I dig that. The drumming, on point, 100%. It's not very flashy, it's not very showy, but there's little elements of embellishment that I just really love. And I think the drummer has a strong sense of understanding the musical side, what's going on with the chords and the keys, and utilizing runs that work well with it. For instance, he did a pretty typical drum fill. I think he started on snare, maybe he started on the high tom, worked his way down the toms, and that took us into a chord change, and the chord change was beneath the one that we were just at, so it sounded like the song dropped in range, and he ran down his toms before the song dropped, and it felt like the chord change was uh in a continuation of his reducing pitch of the toms. Just really interesting stuff like that happening all over the place. There's some really cool rhythmic call and response going on. I pointed out at one time he was basically doing quarter notes on the cymbals, and every once in a while he would throw in some 2/8 notes instead of a quarter note, so you get uh, but the cool thing is that he would echo that rhythm in the bass kick like a beat or two beats later, and get this rhythmic call and response between what his cymbals and bass are doing. Just very cool stuff on that level. It's like I said, for the most part, it's just real strong metronome playing. He does a fantastic job of just keeping the beat, sitting in that pocket, occasionally throwing a riff in. But if you really pay attention to what he's doing, there's these really cool little embellishments going on that don't really change the song too much if you don't notice them. If you do notice them, the song as a whole isn't really affected either way. But it's like a little Easter egg, like, hey, drummer, I see what you're doing. Keep it up. Um, yeah, so that's really cool. The bass, I mean, it was a bass. It did bass things. Lots of root note playing, lots of either doing what the guitars are doing or doing what the bass kick is doing. Just a lot of playing follow the leader. But I think it had a nice bass tone. It sounded like it was finger picking, so it had a nice roundness to the timbre. And it was brought up in the mix a little bit. I heard it throughout the song, even though it was still in that sort of muted, not highlighted element. It wasn't like, um, and of course, now that I think Polyphia, not necessarily the band I want to go to, but Polyphia's mixing keeps the bass a little higher, probably because they value all four of their members equally. But you can always hear the bass clear as day. In this one, it was not necessarily like that. It was more of a traditional metal mix where the bass is a bit lower. It fills in the lower end range, but isn't necessarily spotlighted in any way. But I heard it, which is, it's kind of sad that the bar is that low. But I heard the bass, and that makes me happy. The song as a whole, I think it works well. Like I said, it fits in this role where it can feel repetitious if you're not paying attention to the nuance. You're really just feeling it, feeling the atmosphere, feeling the timbres and the chord progressions, the emotion of the song. But there is a little bit of differing ideas if you pay attention to musically what's going on. And like I said, it's an interesting way to write a song. I think it works well here. They found an atmosphere they wanted to dig into, and they just rest in it. And if you're looking for this emotion, this atmosphere, you can't go wrong checking the song out. But for me, it felt just a little static on the dynamic area. And I was going to say I'm a sucker for dynamics, and I am. If a song is highly dynamic, I'm instantly sucked in. I'm going to be checking out more of it. But dynamics to me are a strong tool that I like to listen to in music. That isn't to say that I only listen to songs that are highly dynamic, but the song has to really be doing something interesting if it doesn't incorporate dynamics. And unfortunately, metal and rock in general just aren't really known for a lot of volume dynamic work. So I can't really take points off for them on that range. And then, like I said, the other dynamic aspect would be atmosphere and emotional stuff, timbre, and again, I can't really take points off because they went in going for a specific idea, and I think they executed on it very well. This is just more of a subjective thing where I would prefer my songs to just have a little bit more differentiation in their ideas. But again, like I said, that's personal, that's subjective. They killed it right here though. And like I said, the vocals, I think this is probably going to be something that happens all week. If this wasn't Unique Vocals Week, I still probably would have talked about the vocals. But being that this is Unique Vocals Week, I'm probably going to spend more time on the vocals than usual because these songs are selected with interesting vocals in mind. And this one right here, yeah, I think it's a perfect start to the week, showcasing uh, somebody who uses harshes and cleans and inverts the reason they use them and how they're mixed into the music. It's a very interesting way to go about it. The vocals are definitely what kept me interested throughout the song, though it's also sort of a novelty for me once I listen to a lot of Mastodon, assuming that this vocalist utilizes this technique a lot. The novelty of it's going to wear off. I'm going to get more accustomed to the way he uses them. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Mastodon's Crack the Skye. This is where you guys come in though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this one or not. Let me know if anything stood out to you that maybe I didn't touch on. If you have any insight into some stuff. If you're a vocalist, especially somebody who does harsh vocals, and or if you have any links to somebody who is a vocal coach and has looked at this vocalist or maybe interviewed them, I'm really interested in how that very narrow, sharp cutting harsh was done. Like I said, I took a guess at it as somebody who is uneducated in the uneducated might not be the right word, but I'm definitely not a professional in the vocal area. Um, I took my stab at it, my guess, but I'm probably off, and I am curious how it's done because it's just like I said, it seems to be utilized in a very different way than harshes usually are, and it could be entirely production. I mentioned that the cleans have a lot of width and reverb on them. I think those are done through production. He does get some extra width naturally by singing by creating the sound closer to his throat rather than projecting out the front. But I still think there's a lot of production in there that helps widen it out even more, and it's very possible that the production helps the harshes narrow down a bit and pierce through the sound as well. But there's got to be some physical sound creation going on that helps attribute to that. You can't do everything digitally. So I'm interested. I am interested in what he's doing to achieve that. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box, and there is a link for Linktree with everything related to the channel. You can support us. You can support me through Patreon. For just $1, you get to help vote on future themes and songs. This song was selected through Patreon. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can join a Discord community and chat with other music aficionados and fans and composers. We actually have a very wide coverage of people in the community. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm running out of words to say. It's an awesome community, though. If you like to chat with people about music, hit up the Discord link. Above the description box, there's a like, subscribe, and a bell. If you could press all three, it helps out the channel immensely. I appreciate it. We got one more video coming out in about 5 minutes. It'll be our special selection for the day. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.